endotracheal tube is less than 8 millimeter in size, you will see you will create an autopeep, and that would lead to pneumothorax, and all of you understand what I'm talking about more than what I usually practice in my hospital. ET diameter should be 2 millimeter long, larger than the scope. Fluoroscopy is not required to do transbronchial biopsy in the ICU setting. Okay, how would I do it? Elevated peak pressure, pneumothorax occurs when there is elevated peak pressure. Pneumothorax occurs in ICU setting when there is elevated plateau pressure. Once again, you understand it more. So suddenly, if there is elevation of these numbers, look for pneumothorax as well, because these are the signs of pneumothorax. And also, I'm sure all of you know in intensive care unit how to make a diagnosis of pneumothorax when patient is in supine position and you are going to look for deep sulcus sign. I do not like to do bronchoscopy through the tracheostomy tube. I always switch the tracheostomy tube with an endotracheal tube, because tracheostomy tube has got a very tight band and it becomes very difficult to negotiate with a flexible scope. Besides that, it has got narrower diameter as compared to the endotracheal tube. Endotracheal tube is quite malleable. I don't have time to take you the details of all those things, but if you try to shove your bronchoscope through that, I came all the way from Abu Dhabi. I'm not going to stop in 20 minutes. I'm sorry for being dogmatic. But I arrived at 4 o'clock in the morning. So, okay. So, what I'm saying is this, that if you try to shove your bronchoscope through the tracheostomy tube, it has got a very tight band, and you try to shove it, once again, you are going to cause significant damage to your bronchoscope. And just think about a respiratory embarrassment patient would have when the bronchoscope is stuck in the tracheostomy tube. As simple as that. So for all intensivists, don't let your pulmonologist do the bronchoscopy through the tracheostomy tube unless you've got a very small bronchoscope. Okay? Alright, so avoid in the bronchoscopy procedure via tracheostomy tube, proceed in a patient with hemodynamic instability or seizure potential, or VAIA, that is what Atul Bhai says. Procedure in an uncooperative patient, lidocaine, don't give too much of lidocaine, large BAL alloparts, over enthusiasm, and don't use too much of epinephrine or norepinephrine. This is how I do it, put it through the endotracheal tube. This is the T band or Y adductor or T adductor, and these are how I put this cuts on the diaphragm so that you can insert the bronchoscope without too much of problem. Okay? You can do transbronchial needle aspiration through the flex in ICU setting very quickly. I hate to take more time, I'm just kidding. You can make diagnosis of lymphoproliferative disorder in a lung transplant patient with TBNA in an ICU setting that Dr. Gamande showed. Adenocarcinoma diagnosed by transbronchial needle aspiration. And the importance in ICU is that it avoids major surgery in intubated patients or ICU patients, and it also facilitates end-of-life issues when it comes to transbronchial needle aspiration. So let me summarize what I have said, and let me give you some emotions and some of my emotions and my editorial comments. Bronchoscopy in ICU or bronchoscopy anywhere, or therapeutic bronchoscopy anywhere, because it could be done, that does not mean it should be done. Weigh the risks and benefit ratio. Do it for the patient's welfare and not just to set the records. Okay? I did 50 because Atul Bhai did 45. That's not the way you want to do the procedures. Would I do it if this patient was my family? That is a very simple question we can ask ourselves. If patient cannot afford it, would I still, or he or she would still need it? Ask yourself a question. Many a times you do the procedure because patient can afford it. But if patient doesn't afford it, he probably does not need it. That's not an indication to do the procedure. Look into yourself. Is there a less expensive way of doing this procedure? And let me leave you something with you guys. Is something as certain as the sun and the moon in the sky. One day we all will be a patient. You cannot escape that. the way you treat your patient today, that's how you will be treated tomorrow. So so every time you step next to the patient, just see this could be you, okay? With that remark, I appreciate your attention. Thank you very much.
So I always have a problem doing biopsy in these agencies. I generally avoid, and I see that there's a high degree of complication you mentioned. But are you recommending that given the proper indication, we can safely and also get a good yield with transcontinental biopsy?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Let me repeat the question. The question is, in appropriate setting, is transbronchial biopsy safe in intensive care? That is the question.
Ventilated patient.
Yes, in a ventilated patient is on mechanical ventilation, and is transbronchial biopsy safe? And I stand here in front of you and say, yes, it is absolutely safe if you follow all the guidelines that I mentioned to you. 100% FiO2, reduce speed below 5, maintain SpO2 about 90%. There is no need to have fluoroscopy, and if you know the exact method, you will be able to avoid open lung biopsies in those patients. We routinely do it, not even in hundreds, in thousands, without any major complications. Okay?
Thank you, Dr. Abdullah. Excellent speech. And many of our patients, in spite of the best lung protective ventilatory strategy, could not be salvaged. So, with that note, I invite Dr. Yash to throw a light on ECMO as a ventilatory modality for such life-saving hypoxia secondary to H1N1.
So please forgive me. I'm going to talk on, I must thank again Dr. Rajesh for getting me to this wonderful conference, and I'm so happy to see such a large audience. I'm going to talk about ECMO in H1N1. That's the hospital where I work. We had quite a few patients the previous season. Well, this is what a circuit of ECMO looks like. This is the oxygenator. It is a membrane oxygenator which can be used for a long period of time. This is the centrifugal pump for pumping the blood. This is the mixed venous saturation monitor, the heat exchanger, backup battery. This is a carton which it is laid. And these are monitors for circuit pressure and ACT monitoring. Fundamentally, for some of you who are not been doing cardiac procedures, what it does is it drains the blood from the major central veins of the patient into the pump. There is a centrifugal pump which causes less damage to the blood constituents. It pumps it through the membrane oxygenator, oxygenates the blood, through a heat exchanger to maintain the temperature, or heat or cool the patient. That's the oxygen diagrammatic cylinder. And you pump it back either into the central vein of the patient or into the arterial circulation of the patient. So that's a veno-venous pump and veno-arterial. The history goes back almost 100 years. Heparin was invented in 1916 by MacLean, and Gibbon was the one who basically started the concept. Blood oxygenation with membrane oxygenators was started in 1944 by Kolff. Early developments of bypass happened in mid-20th century, and silicone membrane oxygenator came in 1957. That's the first cardiopulmonary bypass machine, Gibbon. Prolonged cardiopulmonary bypass started in 60s and 70s. Hill, first adult ECMO was used for an aortic rupture. 18 centers in 1986 in the US are doing ECMO. In 86, Catinoni showed a 50% survival for extracorporeal carbon dioxide removal. Some of you must have met him during this previous conference in Delhi. 89 years also ECMO registry was established. and 120 centers worldwide are doing it. This is what the first successful ECMO looked like. So does ECMO work? Well, the first carbon dioxide removal trials, the Zeppol et al., 74, the randomized prospective trial, survival in both arms, that is control and ECMO arm, were 10%, so there was no survival benefit. These were the early studies, but there were a lot of problems with those early ECMO trials. Arterial ECMO was used, which is the likelihood of embolization is more. High anticoagulation bleeding complications because anticoagulation monitoring was not very good. High pressure ventilation was used, so ventilator-induced lung injuries were more in those patients. And the mean duration of ventilation prior to putting the patient on ECMO was a long duration, 9 days. So that is, the complications of mechanical ventilation were already setting in, and maybe with a higher incidence of ventilator-associated pneumonia. Then Morris et al. In 1994 showed 33% survival in ECMO against 42% in patients with pressure-controlled inverse ratio ventilation. So there was no significant difference in the two groups at that point of time. So both the trials, the old trials, the technology was old and it may not have too much of relevance now. This is a meta-analysis of a large number of patients in between ECMO and non-ECMO patients. You can see this. So what it shows is over the last 40 years, the survival has increased significantly, but in both the groups. And there is the difference between the two is not significant. Again, one can criticize this study because there were a lot of other flaws. The population was not uniform. The criteria for labeling a patient ARDS or for putting them on ECMO were very variable and flexible. So one can criticize these things, but the basic fundamental, this is so far nobody has really shown tremendous ECMO benefit, survival benefit of ECMO. However, things have changed, technology has improved, expertise has improved. There are a lot of centers worldwide, as I said, which are practicing ECMO. Some of the leaders in the field are Ann Arbor in Michigan, and Glenfield Hospital, Leicester, Berlin Heart Institute, a couple of other institutes in Germany. Now, this was a study in ARDS patients with PF ratio less than 100, NIH-granted study. Intensive care, this was a British National Health Audit, 1,500 patients with PO2 less than 100, and there was a phone survey. And 72% of mortality was there in patients who were referred for ECMO but could not be given ECMO because of the lack of either facilities or access. Patients about whom I am talking are classical patients with admitted to the intensive care unit with 100% ventilation, FiO2, with a PEEP of more than 15, pressure controlled inverse ratio ventilation. You already tried. If you have the facility of nitric oxide, you are given nitric oxide, you turn the patient prone. So whatever is possible in our armamentarium, we have tried it, but it's not working. Patients has got refractory hypoxemia or hypercapnia. This is what the plain X-ray and the CT would look like, with the loss of aerated lung tissue and diffuse bilateral sort of consolidated picture. This is what a normal lung would look like, and this is what the patient who is going to need your ECMO would look like, and this is one of those unfortunate ones who didn't survive. So, 97, chest, there was a paper on ECMO for adult respiratory failure. What did they find? Conventional patients, 28-30% survival, and ECMO patients, 68%. So this was a significant difference in with survival benefit. This was a New Zealand and large ECMO registry of Australia and New Zealand centers, which had an H1N1. I'm coming to H1N1, it's used in H1N1 in pneumonia. So this was a large registry of these two countries, 201 patients with either confirmed or suspected H1N1. So 68 received ECMO, 133 did not receive ECMO. Out of the ones which received ECMO, 61 had confirmed on serology, H1N1 either on PCR or on culture, and 7 had suspected that they had probably had influenza A, but the subtyping was not done. So basically what they found is a significant survival, but in both the groups, and no significant difference between the two groups. The patients who received ECMO, now what is important in this registry was that significant percentage of these patients, about 13% of the patients were pregnant. And pregnant patients had 100% survival. So this is an important finding. They had, most of the patients were adults, young to middle-aged adults, but not very old or not very young patients. And survival was almost 70 to 80%. So these were the two groups. Again, patients who received ECMO had no survival benefit, A. B, they stayed for longer in the intensive care unit. They had more breathing problems, they required more blood transfusions, and obviously it costed more because ECMO is an expensive modality. So this was a registry. It was not a randomized controlled trial, so it cannot show a benefit. But what it shows is that it's a safe modality with a reasonably good survival benefits. Now this is a Caesar trial. It's a conventional ventilation versus ECMO for adult respiratory failure. H1N1, there is very little literature which I have shown, the one registry I have shown, but it is appeared only in 2009. So the number of patients who received ECMO is not very large, and therefore I cannot really comment too much on it, but basically the same thing would apply for any patient with acute respiratory failure and ARDS. So this is a conventional ventilation versus severe versus ECMO for patients with severe but potentially reversible respiratory failure. So this is the primary hypothesis that will it have survival benefit and is it cost effective? This is a British study for the National Health Service scheme. Study period was 5 years, 2001 to 2006, 180 patients, again middle-aged patients. Conventional treatment was 90, ECMO same number of patients, and patients who received actually ECMO were 75%. So 63% of ECMO patients survived at 6 months in comparison to 47% from conventional ventilation. So this is a survival benefit at 6 months. So based on these sort of anecdotal reports, the media leaked out, including in the Indian media, and this was a publication in Washington about how H1N1 patients survival can be improved by pumping oxygen in their blood. And this was the Times of India, heart machine helps cure H1N1 patient. This was a patient from Narayan Hridaya in Bangalore, and this patient survived with ECMO. And another newspaper followed that. This is what the setup looks like there, Narayan Hridaya, and this is what the setup looks like. You know this thing. This is one of our intensive care patients who is on dialysis. He was on ECMO, he didn't survive. So I thank you for your attention. See, all these missions would not happen in future. And you monitor the ACT. And you keep the ACT at above 200, around 200, 250. So they do get bleeding products. So you have to, I mean, there is a large amount of blood products and coagulation support required.
And how do you wean from ECMO?
Yeah, you see, now ECMO if you're giving for ARDS, because that's what we are talking about. So once the patient